Yo, we're back. Cognitive Behavioural Therapy, Chapter 9. If you're watching, hit that subscribe button. We've got about 4 parts at the end of the book. How cognitive behavioural therapy works. Cognitive behavioural therapy does not rely on chemicals to change people's behaviour. Instead, it focuses on how people can view certain memories and certain perceptions that they consider the truth. It may seem pretty basic. In fact, to some people it may seem like it doesn't really get to the heart of the matter, as far as phobias, depression, anxiety, and other negative emotional mental states go. But upon further investigation, it actually goes quite deep. The essence of cognitive behavioral therapy revolves around the fact that the world's stimuli aren't necessarily neutral. Now, this is going to surprise a lot of people. A lot of people would think that a building that's on fire has to be a disaster. In their minds, there's really no other way to interpret that. Can you imagine a building on fire with orange and yellow bright flames coming out of it, people screaming, commotion and smoke everywhere? It's very easy to conclude that there is really only one way to look at this situation. But what if I told you that 2 people looking at the same scene could choose to interpret it in 2 different ways? One person might think that it's the end of the world. They hear the screams, they feel the heat, and they are just paralyzed. They are petrified and don't know what to do. Others run around like chickens with their heads cut off, or they just stare dumbfounded at the tragedy unfolding before their eyes. A lot of people respond this way. What if I told you that there was another approach? For a great number of people, when they see the same collection of stimuli, they calmly get out of the building, walk to an open scene, reach into their bag or coat pocket, and whip out a mobile phone. They calmly call the fire department as well as the local hospital. They understand that people could lose their lives. They understand what's at stake. They do all these in a very calm, focused, and deliberate way. Now let me ask you, which approach will produce better results? Do you think you're helping yourself and those around you if you choose to look at the situation like it's some sort of disaster or Armageddon scenario? Unfortunately, you're not doing anybody any big favors. If you think that it's the end of the world, you become emotionally paralyzed. You overload yourself with emotions. You aren't good for much of anything, you just freeze up. Now on the other hand, if you look at the same exact facts and conclude that this is solvable, and that there is a way out of this situation, chances are there will be more people living through that disaster. There is no dispute as to what happened. The building still went up in flames. People are still homeless. Some people are in danger of getting burnt. The big issue is how to interpret the same set of facts. The facts are not going to change. What changes is how we choose to respond. That is the core of cognitive behavioral therapy. You may have had a situation in your life where somebody touched you in a sexual way. This was somebody you trusted. This was somebody who was very close to you. You felt betrayed back then. You felt let down. It was as if your world fell apart because this person who you respected, loved, and adored betrayed your trust. Nobody's going to dispute that this actually happened. The problem is how you choose to interpret that. Are you going to interpret these facts so they continue to hold you back and drag you down from a life of fulfillment and peace that you deserve? Or are you going to take an alternative path? Nobody's saying that those facts did not happen. Nobody's saying you should just forget about those facts because they don't matter. What's important is how you choose to respond in the here and now. Is your response going to help you lead a more balanced and effective life? Alternatively, are you going to keep dragging back all these painful memories and making them worse today by possibly exaggerating them, reading all sorts of frustrations into them, or otherwise playing a trick on yourself? Unfortunately, the vast majority of people do not understand that they have this power. They do not realize that they have the ability to look at the world in such a way that they don't have to feel sad, let down, depressed, or anxious. They don't have to be addicts. They don't have to have all sorts of negative personality and emotional or psychological disorders. A lot of those are actually coping mechanisms. the core of cognitive behavioural therapy. Since CBT focuses on changing how you interpret stimuli, it's crucial that you are clear on how you think. When a person who needs help doesn't think that their thoughts are negative, then it's going to be very hard to help that person. If they don't think that the way they interpret life stimuli is holding them back, it's going to be all that more difficult to get that person's life to change. The core of cognitive behavioural therapy is simple clarity. Are you clear that these thoughts are negative? Are you clear about the fact that when you think these thoughts and interpret them a certain way, you are saying the wrong things, feeling the wrong emotions, and doing the wrong actions? Are you aware that this leads to some sort of vicious cycle or downward spiral? Let's say that you have negative memories of the past. If you interpret them in such a way that you say negative things today, people of course will respond in such a way that you can easily interpret as negative. You then feel bad and you react in a negative way some more. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Who told you that you're ugly? Who told you you're worthless? Who told you that you're a loser? Those are interpretations. Clarity is crucial. For a lot of people, clarity also requires trust. You have to trust yourself that you can make the right decisions. Unfortunately, a lot of us have lost trust in ourselves. We feel that our lives are spiraling out of control, and there's really not much we can do. Everything's in the hands of other people. We are rocked backwards and forwards by situations outside of our control. Well, those are just interpretations. We have chosen them, we have control over them. We can take ownership of them if we want to. The Cbt therapist's job is to first get the patient to clearly assess the way they think. We're not even going to say it's negative, positive, or less than optimum. We're not even going to apply any labels with regards to what's going on. Instead, the therapist just wants the patient to sit down and have a clear understanding of what's going on. What is the patient thinking about? What kinds of facts come to their mind? How do they interpret those facts? And what is produced by that interpretation? They are asked to honestly and accurately say what happens when they think about something, how they feel when they say something, and what they often do when they feel certain emotions. The most important aspect of this is the sense of ownership the patient gets. These thoughts don't come out of nowhere, they're your thoughts. Nobody puts them in your brain, nobody's pointing a gun at your head, demanding that you stop thinking those thoughts. This is the first step, clarity, from which a sense of ownership or control flows. Once the therapist is able to get the patient to admit that this is how they think, then they are then in a position to take ownership of that. The next step is to understand that there are two sides to every story. In the first step, we have a clear understanding of what we're thinking about and how we feel about those things. We also have a clear realization of how we interpret facts. The next step is to look at those facts and see if there are alternative interpretations. For example, if you're looking for a job and you send out 100 resumes, only to get 100 rejections. You're thinking to yourself, I am unemployable. I am a total and complete failure. I'm a loser. Now please understand that the facts are the same. The fact is you sent out 100 resumes. The fact is none of those resumes led to a job interview. Here's the question that the Cbt therapist will ask. Given the facts, is the judgment or the conclusion that you are a loser or somehow unemployable the logical conclusion? Could it be that you sent out your resume at the end of November and December and that there is a steep drop in employment? Could it be that you're targeting jobs in a particular industry that is seasonal or on a downturn? Could it be that you did not write your resume well enough? Maybe you left out some important details. Maybe you did not have the time to polish your resume. Could it be that you need a cover letter instead of just sending out a resume? When the therapist talks about alternatives this way, you as the patient are forced to look at the facts that you thought was so black and white in a different way. You start getting to that aha moment. You start thinking, oh okay, I was just instantly jumping to the worst conclusion. I was instantly thinking of the worst case scenario. CBT teaches you to become fully aware of your thought process, and your conclusions are drawn from them. CBT doesn't grab you by the neck and say, you're thinking the wrong way, you're thinking negative thoughts, or you're thinking about things that you shouldn't be thinking about. Instead, it puts you in a position to take ownership of what's going on after you become clear about the judgments you have made. After you are clear about alternative interpretations or the facts of your life, the therapist will coach you in how to interpret the same set of facts in a way that pushes you upward or is at least neutral. The ideal is to swap out negative assessments and replace them with positive ones. If this isn't possible, then at the very worst, the CBT therapist would want you to come up with a neutral conclusion. Another approach would be for the therapist to challenge the patient to look at the past traumatic experience in a different light. How? The patient is challenged to look for the things that went right. It's very easy to focus on only the things that went wrong. It doesn't take much effort to concentrate on the things that are missing or the areas for improvement. It does take quite a bit of effort to look at the big picture and understand that there were many other things that were going right. This creates a sense of perspective. This enables the patient's attitude to change. They start interpreting the experience, not from that narrow lens that just focuses on the perceived failure, shortcoming, harm, insult, embarrassment, humiliation, and the negative emotional states at that point in time. Instead, the person is invited to look at the big picture by paying attention to the things that went right. Everything then falls into place. It doesn't make the hurt go away, nor does it make the facts go away, mind you. However, the patient gets perspective. This enables them to have a healthier frame of mind when it comes to that past trauma. It may well be that as this person got older, the more they exaggerated things in their mind. It's not unusual for people to have had a fairly minor experience in the past. However, given how frustrating their lives have become, they start looking at this past as some sort of reason or excuse for why they're struggling in the present day. This often blows things out of proportion or exaggerates them in your mind. This is the complete process of cognitive behavioral therapy. It's all about changing how you interpret stimuli, either from past memories or information that you are currently receiving. Why is personal interpretation so important? When you choose how you interpret the neutral stimuli that the world is throwing your way, you are in more control. You can choose an interpretation that makes you feel more confident and enables you to be more effective. A negative experience doesn't have to be the end of the world. The experience you just had doesn't have to be some sort of personal insult. It doesn't have to dismiss you as a person. The way you interpret stimuli impacts your emotional state. Your emotional state in turn impacts what you choose to do. When you go through this process in an unmindful way, you might think that this is all automatic. You might think that there's really nothing you can do, because the moment you start encountering certain things, instinct kicks in. You just end up saying certain things and taking certain actions. It doesn't have to be that way. You have control over your emotions, your actions, and most importantly, your thoughts. You don't have to interpret this memory the exact same way you've been doing for all those years. You can choose to change how you interpret. This is the essence of CBT. It's all about changing the mindset, which leads to a change in attitude and a change in behavior and speech. These flow into each other these flow into each other. When you make a positive change in the way you interpret things, you start acting in a more positive way. This leads to more positive reactions from people around you. You then feel happier because you are well received. People are sending you the right signals. This makes it much easier for you to interpret the world in the best possible light. This then makes you emotionally positive, which leads to you taking more effective action. You're doubting yourself less. You're feeling less anxiety. You suffer less depression. This can create an upward spiral. This is the foundation of cognitive behavioral therapy. It all boils down to how you interpret reality. So we're going to cut it there. We're in chapter 10 tomorrow, intervention steps practiced by CBT therapy counselors and professionals. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.